Hello, I am Jasmine and I am learning a card trick, the card spring. The card spring is a magician's trick, and you are springing cards from one hand into the other, but in an accordion like fashion. You've probably seen it in many forms of media or in different TV shows and maybe cartoons or anime, where they'll spring the card from one hand into the other, and sometimes it's like an arched fashion. I wanted to learn this because my son, he enjoys magic, and it would be cool to surprise him with this trick, and I can work with move my hands a little bit differently than what I'm used to doing. So it's outside of my comfort zone, but it seemed like a fun thing to try to learn. Here I'm trying to figure out the placement. I did have to watch the video a few times before I actually started trying to understand how to properly place my hands. And in the beginning, I did have everything backwards. I'm supposed to use my dominant hand, and I kept using my non-dominant hand to start my cards with. I did not realize how difficult it would be to squeeze a deck of cards. Um, it felt like there was a lot of pressure, and yeah, my hand started to cramp up, and also because I was kind of holding back because I'm not sure why I was holding back on just squeezing the cards. I guess I was too afraid of them flying everywhere. But that's kind of the point of learning and getting used to it. It's going to fly everywhere, and I'm pretty sure that's why the guy recommended you do the card spring on the bed as you learn when you first start learning, because the cards are going to go everywhere. Here I do not have my hand again in the hand I catch the cards with in the correct way. I came back later that day to practice. My hands had started to cramp because I was squeezing cards, and then I had to position my hands in a way I'm not used to having them. They're usually relaxed and just free, and so now I'm holding a whole deck of cards and trying to squeeze them, and that was kind of killing my hands at first. So I took a break from the card trick and decided to come back later. Here I decided to at first take my time and then slowly push the cards. I had to figure out what my flow would be, and at first it seemed like I would get it, and then it was like one step forward, two steps back for me, and I ended up dropping all of my cards. But I decided to go ahead and let them stay. Whatever dropped on the floor would stay on the floor, and later I could count them and see what did drop. Maybe to compare later on what I've done, if I dropped more cards or less cards as I went. I did realize I forgot a little bit about the placement, but I did not rewatch the video yet to check the placement. I wanted to test how my non-dominant hand would catch the cards, and what would happen depending on my hand placement, on how I either stretched my hand a certain way or turned it a certain way. And you can see I'm kind of jerky because I'm still a little bit uncomfortable squeezing the cards and then trying to catch it. I think on my dominant hand, I started to sort of get the air in the cards and the rhythm, but making sure I catch it was a little a little difficult. I remembered this time to shake my hands out and work them out before trying the trick, to sort of loosen it up. Overnight I did do hand exercises to loosen my hands up because I do work all day on the computer typing, and I never considered how tight my hands were getting, and when I'm using them on the computer, because you're just typing and you forget to do your hand exercises. So it helped loosen me up, and I could later squeeze the cards. And after watching the video a few more times and actually resting, getting a good night's rest, I felt a little bit more comfortable holding the card deck and squeezing it to spring the cards out. And as you can see here, it got a little bit more comfortable. It's still a little messy, but it felt like I was getting the rhythm of the cards coming out down a little bit better. And my non-dominant hand catching the cards, my pinky, you can see it's placed a little bit differently. And I'm trying to get the cards to funnel down into that hand as I spring the cards into it. And that time the trajectory kind of changed, how I spring out the cards. So I'm going to move my hand maybe a little bit further out to try and catch it, seeing how I was pushing the cards in a different direction. But I kept my pinky in that funnel, and it didn't, over time it didn't hurt, or it didn't cramp up as much because I did prepare my hands and I practiced holding my hands in those weird positions. And one thing I noticed about the card swings, they kind of start close together and then they expand out and then they contract back in. So I was trying to see if I could expand it. I felt I had a good rhythm. I still needed to work a little bit on control, but I wanted to see what it looks like at this point of me learning to expand. I begin again, stretching out my hands. Sometimes they still cramp, but it wasn't as bad as long as I was doing my hand exercises. And I felt a little bit more energetic during this session. So I crunched my hands and got ready for the cards, and there was a little less adjusting my dominant hand when getting ready for the card spring. So when I grabbed them, it felt a little bit more natural. And as you can see, it comes out a little smoother than it did before, and I'm moving a little faster. So I'm not an expert yet at the card spring, but I feel like I'm getting there in learning the card spring. I got curious about the distance again and placement of my hand that catches it. And I decided to just move it back to where it was. There, I tried to pull the cards. Big chunk fell out. I got a little excited and lost a little bit of the control that I had of the cards beforehand. Change position and try it from a different distance to see if I could catch it. The cards didn't spill out everywhere like the first or second time that I had tried. And it's moving smoother. And as you can see, there's a small spring. It's not a huge spring like you see on TV, but there's a small spring that happened there. I contract my hands as I'm springing it out, and expand my hands as I spring it out and then contract them back. So at the end is where I need to work on the card spring, but I felt I made some type of progress.